We got a fun question here from Paul. Is the human heart good or bad? Is it bad before Christ enters us and good after he enters? There's sort of two questions here. And Mike, I mean, the reason I think this is a fun question because you think about culture today, and boy, everybody just says, follow your heart.
That's right.
That's the main thing that you're supposed to follow. You know, if your heart says do it, go ahead.
Yeah. Remember that gum that used to explode in your mouth with juice when you crunched down on it?
Oh, yes, yeah.
It's sort of like that. On the outside, it's sort of, I kind of bland. I do some bad things. I know that I'm not perfect. But boy, if you bite down on the center,
the
deeper you go, my heart, I'm actually a pretty good person.
Yeah.
When Jesus said actually it's out of the heart that all of our sins flow. My heart has accomplished sins my hands haven't gotten around to yet.
That's a great text to bring up, Matthew 15:19. For out of the heart come evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false witness, and slander. It's really interesting because how many people today, when they think about the problems with the world, they're pointing the finger outside.
Yeah.
It's other people, whether
influences,
whether it's on the larger scale, political problems, or whether just in our own families or in our own interpersonal relationships. There's always somebody else.
Yep.
And yet Jesus seems to indicate that actually we really need to look inside of us first and think about the ways in which we're contributing to the sin in the world. And it really just flows from the heart. Jeremiah 17:9 is another one, right? The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick. Who can understand it? And, Paul, one thing we have to understand is that when God first created the world, he created everything good, including humanity. And so God's creation is good. But when sin entered the world, something changed.
It's like poison getting into the fountain.
That's
At
right.
first, the fountain only bubbled up pure, lovely water. And now it's not that the fountain only produces poison, but that the poison has infiltrated every part of the water supply.
That's right. Through Adam, we've inherited sin, guilt, corruption, and death. We sometimes, we call this original sin. If you want to read about it, you can look at Romans chapter 5. I think that's a great place to go. And of course, the account in the early chapters of Genesis where sin entered the world. And so because of that, really all of us, every single part of us is corrupted in some sense. It's not, Mike, right? We wouldn't say that we're as bad as we could be.
Right.
But my mind, my heart, my body, all of me has been tainted by sin. And it really highlights how much we need the gospel.
That's right. Not as bad as we could be, but not as good as God requires.
And so, getting to the second part of your question, Paul, yes, the human heart is bad because of sin right now. Now, when we come to Christ, something amazing happens. You think about what the author of the Hebrews says in Hebrews 10:22, let us draw near with a true heart in full assurance of faith, with our hearts sprinkled clean from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. One of the promises of the new covenant is that God is going to give us a new heart. He's going to take the heart of stone and give us a heart of flesh. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't still struggle with sin and that our heart will still lead us to sin. So we got to be really careful here. But it's a picture of that new creation that's broken in, that God saving us, rescuing us, and giving us a new heart according to the promise of the new covenant. And so I would say, the heart is bad. God redeems us. Is it still bad after? Well, the reality is sin still comes out of my heart.
Yeah.
and those sins still need to be mortified. Mike, how would you parse, the difference between before we're walking with Jesus believers and after we come to faith?
Yeah, I think it's important for people not to think that the heart is bad or any part of us is bad in itself, in its essence. There's no part of us that is bad. We're created in the image of God. But rather, in every part of us, we are corrupt. And that's why I use that illustration of poison. It's not just it's not that only perverse things are done by us, and especially by non-Christians. It's that nothing that we do is not corrupt. Doesn't have, even in my best frame, in my best attitude, in my best motivations for the best works that I do in a day, even then, sin clings to those works. I want to take credit for it. I'm self-righteous about it, or I'm hypocritical, or I'm inconstant, or I don't do it out of faith. well, then it's vitiated. It's corrupted. And so God could condemn me for the sin clinging to my best works, never mind my outright transgressions. That's the depth of human sin. Not as bad as we could be, because we're created in the image of God, but every part of us is in bondage to sin until God liberates us by His grace, unites us to Christ, and even then, though we love the law, think of Romans 7, we find ourselves breaking it. And not just find ourselves doing it, but there's this perverse part of us that wants to. That's the paradox of our lives now. We're at war, not just with a world out there that has sinful effects on me, but at war, more importantly, within ourselves, because we know that our heart, though new, is still sinful and fallen.